And we're live. It's the Revved Up 906 podcast, a Detroit Pistons podcast to be exact. And I'm Hudson.
And I'm Ryan.
And before we get into today's recap of the Boston Celtics versus the Detroit Pistons, I want to give two plugs. One to episode, is it 13 or 12, Ryan? I'm drawing a
I,
blank.
I-
I
I'm
think
drawing a blank too.
I think it's 13, I believe. Episode 13 that just came out
Yep, it
Saturday.
was 13.
Okay, 13. Yeah. So we just came out Saturday with a podcast talking about the Rising Stars game, and the Detroit Pistons' very own Jalen Duren and Jaden Ivey will be representing the 313 at Utah. And we talk about possible matchups that might be fun for Jalen and Jaden. And then we also talk about the impact coaches can make on the young Pistons players. We're going to be seeing coaches like Darren Williams and Pau Gasol and Joakim Noah and Jason Terry. So we talk about all of that in this week's podcast. That was really fun. So make sure to go watch that episode and give it a like. And then also this Saturday will be our second merch drop. We will be having these hats, and neither of us are wearing the sweatshirts, but we will also have a new sweatshirt design coming out. So make sure to go follow Grind Clothing Co. on Instagram to find those links. And then you can also find the link to the new merch drop in the description below and in our YouTube bio. So with no further ado, let's get into today's recap. The final score of today's game was 111-99 in the Boston Celtics' favor. This was the Celtics' third win against the Pistons this year out of four. What are some of your first takeaways from today's game, Ryan?
It just felt like we didn't do necessarily anything wrong, or we didn't do necessarily anything right. We were just playing against a good team at the end of the day. This is a team that I see in the NBA Finals this year. This is a team that I see potentially winning it all this year. They have arguably the MVP in Jason Tatum. They have a crazy good overall team in terms of depth. So, am I surprised that we lost this game? No, we should have lost, even if they were playing without Marcus Smart and Jaylen Brown. It's just a good overall team. Now, that doesn't mean we can't be competitive either. And we did compete with them, as you saw tonight. Granted,
Right.
we didn't. It wasn't as close at the end or anything, and some of our guys didn't have necessarily the greatest of games, but we still competed.
Right. We saw Jalen Duren kind of come off a rough Phoenix Suns game against DeAndre Ayton and come out. Didn't necessarily nothing jaw dropping offensively, but finished with 14 rebounds, 7 points. Those 14 rebounds against a solid center in Patrick Williams. So it's really kind of nice to see him get involved tonight. And I think that's also kind of thanks to Jaden Ivey because their chemistry is really developing. And it's really nice to see them two kind of connect in a season of losing because that's definitely a positive you can kind of take away is well, at least Jaden and Jalen are starting to develop a chemistry that you can kind of look forward to for seasons to come because you kind of assume they will be around long term. So it was nice to see Jalen Duren kind of have a comeback game and kind of show that he can impact the game coming off a tough game against the Phoenix Suns.
Yeah, and the Celtics, they have Al Horford too outside of Robert Williams, and so
Right.
the fact that Al Horford was very quiet tonight shows you how good Duren was on the glass and how good he was defensively. Because Al Horford typically has at least 14 points a night. He can hit a three any day of the week now as he's progressed and gotten further along in his career and developed that game. So it just shows you how good we were defensively. Like we held Jason Tatum to 12 points in the first half. Now, did he have 22 points in the second half? Yes, he did, and that was a lot. But when you hold a guy like that to just 12 points in the first half, you know you're doing something right defensively. And
Right.
that shows you how good that or how well you could say our team has gotten along the course of the year. They may not show it every single night, but they showed it in the first half tonight against a championship caliber team. And that shows you the growth and maturity of our team. And yeah, Jaden Ivey had 14 points, and that's quiet for him. And he didn't necessarily have 9 assists like he has been, where he had
Right.
5 tonight. But outside of him and Dern not having a great game offensively, I mean, he did miss one shot and he made a free throw, but 7 points is still quiet for him. And you had
Mhm.
Stu have a double-double and 10 points, 12 rebounds. I would have liked to see more points from him still, but I'm going to take that. Bogey, I
Absolutely.
will point out, has been in a slump in scoring because we've seen him in the early part of the season go on for 25 plus. And
Right.
now, as of the last couple of games, he's averaging like just 21 points. And yeah, I'm going to take 21 points from him, of course, but that's
Hmm.
still not, it's not what we've been expecting from him as of lately.
Right. You can kind of tell we're a little bit spoiled with Bojan's play by wanting a little bit more than 21, but I agree with you. It does seem that his effect on the game has been down these probably, I'd say 4 or 5 games. So yes, when you look at the box score, you see 6 from 11 from the field, 2 for 4 from the 3-point line, 21 points. You're like, okay, yes, that's not bad, but his effect on the game and him being involved in the process throughout 4 quarters has kind of been down. So you kind of want to see him be the influential player on the offense that he was before. And I'm not sure really what the effect is, why that's happening. I'm not really sure. Nothing's really come to mind why he's not being involved as much. I think it might have to do with Killian no longer being in the starting lineup.
Mhm.
That's really the only difference I kind of see in his play because Killian hasn't started probably the last 5, 6 games. So that's really the only explanation I can kind of come to mind with. But yeah, I agree with you. It'd be nice to see Bojan really have a big game in these next coming days. Um, you mentioned the Tatum 22 points in the second half. That's what I kind of noticed in this last half was just missed opportunities. We would get a steal and then we wouldn't make it happen offensively. We would get a stop, but then we wouldn't be able to get the bucket. So it's kind of unfortunate in the home stretch of these kind of games. You want to see them put together a couple of possessions where they make it happen and are able to complete that comeback. But we mentioned before the Zoom how, this was the kind of game you don't really mind losing because they are a championship caliber team. We know that we're tanking for Wemby. We know we're the bottom of the East, but you also want to be competitive with teams like this just so then you can look back on the season and be like, well, we were competitive with the Boston Celtics. We were competitive with the Golden State Warriors. So this is kind of game that you lose, but you're like, hey, we'll take it. We'll take a loss like this. At least we can say that, you know, like you mentioned, we let Jason Tatum only score 12 points in the first half. So we'll take stuff like that. Um, Killian Hayes with a solid outing, his first solid outing since his Paris game. He had 17 points, 9 assists, 3 for 7 from the 3-point line, and 7 of 16 from the field in 32 minutes. Hey, by all means, that's the perfect kind of game that he just and the difference between this game and the past 5, 6 games that he's kind of been quiet is he was involved and he seemed engaged. His body language was energetic. I noticed when we were in Detroit for the Charlotte Phoenix game that he just seemed like he was going through the motions. He didn't seem like he was doing everything with a purpose. So it was really nice to see him come out against a team like the Boston Celtics that are a strong, consistent, tough, hard-nosed team and be able to put up a stat line like this because it does and you know what? He had a good fourth quarter and I know I've called him out on his nerves and his not pulling up and making things happen in clutch moments. And he was the guy that made the big plays and the team wasn't able to match it. So it's nice to see an outing like that from Killian.
Yeah, he had a great game tonight. And to your point of the last couple games not maybe being there exactly is Well, he stayed out of foul trouble really tonight. He didn't really turn the ball over. He only had one turnover, had three fouls. In that sense, when you Casey is going to involve these guys as much as he can. And so when you stay out of foul trouble and you don't turn the ball over as much, he's going to play you. And that to that point though, it showed that Killian was in the game and he was wanting to produce. Because when you stay out of foul trouble, man, you're going to get so many more opportunities than if you're fouling. And that typically is the case for Jalen Duren or Jaden Ivey or anybody like that, because they typically rack up fouls. And that's just inexperience, really. But now that they're starting to keep it calm and mellow down and just focus on the game rather than trying to do every little thing, that's going to show in the box score that, yeah, they were there because Killian had the 17. Jaden had the 14 and Jalen had the 14 rebounds. So it shows you that when you put your head down and play, rather than try and focus and do all the little things and make sure you're staying in front of your man and making sure you don't let the baseline give up or anything,
Right.
it shows you that when you really focus, you're going to produce.
Right. To kind of flip the coin, let's talk a little bit about the Boston Celtics and what kind of went wrong with the Pistons. We know Jason Tatum's going to get his. We know typically when Jaylen Brown plays, he's going to get his. When Marcus Smart plays, he's going to get his. And tonight we saw Jason Tatum come out, have a great game. Malcolm Brogdon, Robert Williams are going to have their consistent numbers every night. But the thing with the Celtics tonight is that Derek White showed up to play. And when you have a guy like him who's a little bit more inconsistent, I'm personally a fan of him because he's a tough guy, but he's not the most consistent player for the Celtics. And when he comes out and scores 23 points, 7 assists, 7 rebounds on 8 of 17 shooting, you can almost guarantee the Celtics are just that more dangerous. And so when the Pistons let a guy like Derek White tear you up, it turns into an L.
Yeah, and we haven't seen this version of Derek White for a while because of how much depth this Celtics team has. And
Right.
we haven't seen this Derek White since his San Antonio days, really. And so it just shows you how good of a role player he is. But then to that point, the Celtics with the depth again, Sam Hauser goes off for 15 points, 6 rebounds, and assist with 2 blocks. Like, we can't let Sam Hauser walk in for Jaylen Brown's minutes and drop 15 on us. You
Right.
can't have a guy that normally averages 5 points a game come in and drop 15. And then Brogdon had a great game too, 16 points, 4 assists, 1 rebound, and 2 blocks. Malcolm Brogdon is known for scoring. That's what he's known for.
Yeah.
The Pacers, he wasn't able to do exactly what he did while he was in Milwaukee that one season. But even then, here in Boston, he's coming off the bench and he's still dropping 16. Like, these guys can play and they're in the NBA for a reason. And it just shows you how dangerous this Celtics team is when you have multiple guys who normally don't get as productive as they did tonight, be as productive as they were.
Right. Tonight, the Celtics in every stat category outdid us. And, they shot the ball better. Their free throws were better. They had a couple more assists than us. I guess they had less steals, less blocks. So on the defensive end, the Pistons were a little bit better. But in the end, when offensively the Pistons are getting outnumbered, you want to be able to kind of hang your hat on rebounds, especially in a game this close. But that didn't really happen tonight. The Celtics finished with a total of 51 rebounds and the Pistons finished with 42. So it's on a game like this where, okay, the Celtics are better offensively tonight than us. And on most nights, they're going to be better than most teams. We got to hang our hats on our rebounding. And I think you can kind of give credit to the loss because of getting out rebounded the way they did.
Yeah, and that goes back to our previous last couple of games. Like, you look at the Suns game, DeAndre Ayton finishing with 16 rebounds. You go back to the Hornets, even though Plumlee didn't do his thing like normal, he still had like 7 rebounds. And so we look back, and honestly, my takeaway from the last couple games is we haven't been able to stop opposing centers. We haven't been able to stop them from getting as many boards as they've gotten. That's been our number one struggle. And yeah, Duren is getting 14 like he did tonight, but that's still allowing Robert Williams to get 15. And yeah, Stu had 12, but you're still allowing like Derek White, who normally isn't on the board, to get 7 boards, or Sam
Mhm.
Hauser to get 6, or Al Horford to get 6, Jason Tatum to get 11. Some of these guys that shouldn't be typically on the glass are getting boards.
Yeah.
So it shows you that our bigs in Duren and Stu, and even Bogey or Bay, need to step up on the glass. We can't allow these teams to get as many boards as they're getting. Because, like, you look back at the Hornets game recently, a lot of their boards allowed them to get second chance points. And what does
Mhm.
that do? That makes it feel that much worse that we're not getting the boards because we're allowing these points to happen when they shouldn't even be happening. The same thing happened against the Suns recently. And so when you're allowing teams to get second chance points, that's only going to diminish your game, and you're not going to be as confident, and then you're going to lose the game. And that's what happened tonight.
Right. And Bojan only finished with 3 rebounds. That's something we've mentioned these last couple months is we wished Bojan was a little bit more productive on the rebounding side because he's a big bodied guy. I've never really been able to quite reason with myself on why he's not a good rebounder. He's got the perfect build to, you would think, rack up 6, 7 rebounds a night, but we just don't really see that happen. And so I think that is a credit to why we always get out rebounded is because we have those small forward guys that aren't picking it up on the rebounding side. And, one thing I noticed too, Jalen Duren just wasn't doing a great job of boxing out. And I think that's why he got out rebounded by Patrick Williams because Patrick Williams, like 6 minutes left in the fourth quarter, had 2 offensive rebounds, 2 possessions in a row. And a guy like Jalen Duren just can't allow that in a crucial time like the last 6 minutes of a game is. So you just hate to see that. Something, if you're looking at the box score, you'll notice is the Pistons shot 9 for 33 from the 3-point line, which is 27.3%. That's just not great. And that's kind of surprising too when Killian and Sadiq had 15, Killian had 17. It's kind of surprising when those two guys have that amount of points and we're struggling that much from the 3-point line. That just kind of stood out to me.
Yeah, our 3-point shooting as of lately hasn't been anything spectacular. You see Jaden Ivey taking more chances from three. He normally doesn't pull up that much, but I appreciate that he is because you can tell he's been working on it. Bay, he's been decent like he has been as of recently. Bogey's been struggling a little bit from three, and it shows. Like you had that moment here in the late stretch of this game where it was fast break. Hami faked it out to the corner and then passed it to him. Instead of Bogey focusing on just catching the ball and going up, he focused on where his feet were. And
Yeah.
that then led to a turnover, and there goes Boston the other way. So he's definitely been more picky on what he's been doing recently, and that's been showing because the fact that he had 21 points tonight shows you that he's been more careful with his game rather than what he had been playing like. And I don't know what's leading to that necessarily, but maybe it's in the fact that he thinks he needs to be doing even more than he's doing. And I think he's doing just fine. He doesn't need to be doing more. The rest of the team needs to be doing more. He can't just rely on him to be the guy because when Cade's back, he's not the guy.
Right. One last point I want to make before we wrap things up. Alec Burks finished with 5 points, 3 personal fouls, 2 for 8 from the field in 18 minutes. That's not the typical from him. So, I think if he attributed about 10 more points, this game would have probably looked very different in the final score. And also only 18 minutes coming in the starting lineup. That's kind of surprising. I'm guessing Livers finished with 22 minutes. I'm guessing, the energy that Livers brought kind of just was a little bit more of what Dwayne Casey was looking from Alec, and he just kind of gave the nod to Livers. But kind of interesting because, Burks usually has a little bit more oomph behind those stats.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily knew what happened with him tonight, but to that point, you look at Hami. Hami only had 17 minutes, had 6 points, and you're like, wait a minute, what's going on with Hami now?
Right.
Because normally he's one of the key guys that keeps us in the games. So like tonight, in fact, he had that one block on Robert Williams, takes it all the way back down the court. Killian bounce pass to him, and then goes up with the layup with the and one.
Right.
And that shows you like why isn't he playing more? Like what's going into him only having 17 minutes tonight? Because from that one drive alone, you're like, wow, Hami needs to be out there more. So I'm curious to see on what Casey says post game or what is necessarily going on with Hami going forward. But I just found that interesting tonight.
Yeah, and I've been petitioning the last couple of weeks for a Hamidou starting minutes or starting lineup. I like Alec Burks because we're big fans of Alec Burks, but it would be kind of cool to see Hami with this starting lineup and just see how it works. Why not do it for a couple games and just kind of see what the chemistry is like, how of a energy start Hamidou would give a boost to that starting lineup right in the beginning of a game. We've talked about how the Pistons kind of decide whether it's a win or loss in the first 6 minutes of a game. So maybe adding Hamidou to that starting lineup might give him a boost. I would like to see that social experiment and kind of see what happens. Any last takeaways from today's game, Ryan?
Uh, it was just we were there offensively, maybe not as good as we'd want to be. But the fact that we hung in there against a championship caliber team, I'm happy with that.
Absolutely. And that final score of today's game was 111 to 99 in the Boston Celtics favor. Before you guys leave, make sure to like and subscribe and put your notifications on so you can see all the updated videos that we are putting out. And we also have 2 vlogs from our Detroit trip, so make sure to go check those out and leave a like. We will see you guys in the next episode. Peace.